Um, it is our pleasure to have you here for the UMY Night. For those of you who don't know the Creative Muslim Club, we are a collective, a network, and a club whose mission it is to provide physical and digital space to third culture Muslim kids. And we do that, one of the ways that we do that is with the UMY Nights. And during the UMY Nights, I want to invite all of you to ask as many questions as you have. Just raise your hand, and once we have an opportunity, we'll point and you can ask your question. Before we go on, it is very important to thank our sponsors because we have an iftar today. And part of our iftar is sponsored by Van Dadel, whose date you can find here and also there if you want to buy some. The main point of Van Dadel is that when it comes to the European and American markets, most dates are B and C grade. So they are not specialized to send A grade dates to Europe and America because they don't expect the market to be as large as it is. But they have actually started for the first time here in the Netherlands with importing A grade dates. So if you really want the best grades for this Ramadan, I would advise you guys. They also sponsored our dates for the iftar, so you'll have some practice with them in a minute to buy some of them.
So.
Yeah, in an hour or something. Then we have got Zain Al Amir, which is a lunchroom and patisserie here in The Hague, and they have provided us partly with our iftar as well. So our great thanks to them. And Razia made the soup, but we'll go into that later on. And of course, Samira also pitched in, I guess. So thank you for all the generosity. Let's get into it, Samira. So the funny thing is, Samira and I know each other for 1.5 years. She's already involved with the Creative Muslim Club. But I'm going to try to act as if I don't know her, so that it can become as clear as can be to you guys who she is. So if I may give the floor to you, Samira, can you give us a little introduction about yourself?
Yeah, so first of all, thank you very much for joining us, and thank you for the invitation. And I also want to thank in particular Umayma, because she also did a lot of work behind the scene, and the other ladies who are here before to help with everything. So yeah, it's you will act as if you don't know, but I think we are going to speak about stuff we didn't speak about before. So I think some stuff will be new for you. So my name is Samira Ibrahim, and I think most of the people here know me, but maybe some not. I'm half Dutch, half Egyptian. I was born and raised in the Netherlands, and when I was 12 years old, my Dutch mother, decided that she wanted to move with the family to Egypt. And maybe it's very much in line with the topic of today, so I will refer back to this moment later on. So my Dutch mother, she decided that she wants to move with us to Egypt because she wanted us to get the culture and the religion and the language. And then we stayed there for 12 years. And I think those 12 years were until now the most important years of my life, and they shaped me into the person I am today. And then when I was 24, 25, I came back to the Netherlands, and but I still go back. So I have my Egyptian family over there. I have my teachers there, a whole network. I love the country, and Alhamdulillah, yeah, I have a lot of lovely people over there. I'm going back to Egypt at the end of the month for 1 week. And when I came back to the Netherlands, I started my master at the TU Delft in water management. So in Egypt, I used to study engineering and environmental sciences. And next to it, I used to study at Al-Azhar. And for those who don't know, Al-Azhar, it's called the Kaaba of knowledge. So most of the people, they know the Kaaba in Mecca. And Al-Azhar, they call it the Kaaba of knowledge because people from all over the world come to Al-Azhar to study Arabic, Islamic studies from Indonesia, Malaysia, different African countries, Nigeria, Uganda, Sudan, from the US, from Europe. So in Al-Azhar, it's like a mini version of Mecca. I'm not sure who went to Mecca before.
I didn't.
Some people? Okay, so you noticed in Mecca you have people from all over the globe: Pakistan, India, China, Indonesia, African countries, European countries, and Al Azhar in Cairo. It's a bit the same, because at Al Azhar and you have. I want to make the difference between Azhar Mosque and Azhar University. So I'm talking about the mosque, and it's at the mosque where I had my studies, and it's at the mosque where you have people from all over the globe coming to study, in particular from Indonesia and Malaysia. And alhamdulillah, I had the ability to study there and to develop myself in also classical Arabic, because if you live in Egypt, and maybe people from other Arabic countries, they know, if you live currently in an Arabic country, you will get the dialect and you don't get the classical Arabic. So I used to speak Egyptian. Then, alhamdulillah, I was able to develop myself in Arabic language at Al Azhar and other Islamic studies. And when I came back to the Netherlands and started my studies at the TU Delft, I noticed also that there was a need for, like I was asked very often to teach Arabic to students. So I started to do that structurally at the Vrije Universiteit of Amsterdam. And usually when people start learning Arabic, you start with the Medina books. I'm not sure if anyone here ever started the Medina books. So I started very like ordinary with the Medina books, and I remember maybe the third or fourth lesson, because I also had non-Muslims in class. I started to get more. I started to ask my students, like, what's your real motivation to come to the class and start and learn Arabic? And all of them, even the non-Muslims, they said, well, we want to learn Arabic to understand the Quran, or to be able to read the Quran. And for a lot of non-Muslim students, they were studying Middle Eastern studies, and they wanted to read the Quran to get a better understanding of what they were studying at Leiden University or whatever, where they were doing their studies. And in Medina book, which is used regularly to teach Arabic, you learn words like dajaja, chicken, which it's not mentioned in the Quran at all. You learn words like sayara, car, which is not mentioned in the Quran. Like, you use words which are very practical if you learn Arabic to speak, to have a conversation, to live in an Arabic country and be able to speak to the people, to buy something from the shop. But it's not a method to understand the Quran better or to access the Quran. So then I remember during that time I was going to Egypt quite often, because I was, it was my first year back in the Netherlands, but I used to miss Egypt so much, so I used to go back a lot of times, and I was discussing with one of my teachers there, like, I'm teaching this class in Arabic, but the books I'm teaching, the Medina books, they are not matching with the needs of the students. And at that time, I was studying with him a very advanced way of approaching the Arabic language, which is that you go back to the roots of the Arabic words. Like all Arabic words, you can bring them back to root letters, 3 or 4 root letters. And based on the roots, you are going to understand what the combination of the different letters means. And then you start to form words. And then these words, they cover 80% of the words in the Quran. So I started, and I mentioned to him, what if I translate this method and then I teach it in the Netherlands, because they all want to access the Quran. After all, he said, no. It's extremely hard for Arabic people to understand this method, let alone for people who are not familiar with the Arabic language. And then I said, well, I will just try it. I will try it. And I tried it. And I think until now I gave 15 courses. Like, I see people sitting here from the course, Ifa, Sarah, like, woordenschat van the Quran. I gave it 15, 20 times, and it's extremely practical in teaching Arabic to non-Arabic people who want, and then to access the Quran directly.
And you do that for free?
No. That was it started at the university, and then no.
Because now you've got your own group, right?
No, this is something else. So these were courses we used to give. I used to teach for free to children, but I stopped teaching to children because they are too not so. When it comes to children, you are raising a human being, and teaching is teaching Arabic or Quran for me is something else. I want people are already intrinsically motivated to sit in front of me. So what you are talking about, that was at the Vrije Universiteit of Amsterdam. Then I started for myself, and then people started to ask, well, we also want to learn more about the Quran, but not only the language, but also the meaning of the ayat. Then we come to the concept of halaqah. The halaqah started, and this is something very interesting, I'll mention it. The halaqah started at free 5 years ago. And then people, usually people, when you offer something for free, they are not dedicated to it. So that's very interesting, even in our community. Like we value everything with even if it's just €5 or €10 or whatever. And I don't know where it comes from, but usually when you offer stuff for free, people come and go, and then when they start paying, there is commitment. So we started the halaqah 5 years ago. Then it stopped at one time. Then I went to Istanbul to continue my studies in 2022, I think. And then we started there, and then alhamdulillah, we have a halaqah running from, I think, 2022 until now. And you have people still coming and going, but you have a core group which is very committed. The concept of halaqah is a concept which is very known in Egypt, and also in Morocco, and also in Indonesia. Maybe also in other countries, I don't know about it, but I know of the examples in Morocco, Indonesia, and Egypt. And it's the concept that it started actually with the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and his Sahaba, his companions, that you gather together in the mosque, you sit in a circle, and you start exchanging knowledge. And the concept of halaqah is different than the concept of a lecture. Like in a dars or a lecture, there is a scholar, and you are listening, and he or she teaches something. The concept of halaqah is that, one, it's interactive, so you reflect together on the verses or the content you are discussing. Secondly, it's interactive also in the sense that it's formed also like by the questions asked by the different people. Like we see also in the seerah, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he used to come together with the Sahaba, they used to ask a certain question, and then the halaqah used to evolve, because based on a question they used to discuss a certain topic, or based on a reflection they used to discuss a certain topic, or based on a struggle of someone they used to discuss a certain topic. I think it's a very long introduction of what I do and who I am.
You know, the funny thing is, when we were preparing, I told her, can you give us a good introduction? She said, I'm not going to make a book out of it. And, apparently she
But
did.
I saw a question somewhere, and I like to have this session interactive, actually.
Yes, please.
So if you are okay with that.
I'm completely fine with it.
Maybe a very technical question, but I'm very interested in the exact studies that you did, like the names of studies that you did in Azhar and then also Istanbul. So where are you specialized in, and what kind of studies did you do?
Oh, that's a very long list, but I am. I can mention some stuff, but I won't be able to mention everything because.
Like, where did you start?
So that's a good question. I think you wanted to ask something similar, but we can start already with this.
Yeah.
So when it comes to Islamic studies, you have 13 different fields. It's like in medicine, and then you have different departments or fields or whatever. And you have a priority which category or field you start. Not because one is more important than the other, but you need a certain priority to understand some other classes and stuff. So based on the classification of the 13 different subjects or fields or whatever you want to call them, you start with tajweed, because the Quran was revealed in a reciting way, not as a written book. And the recitation of the Quran is based on how you pronounce letters. And tajweed is basically the knowledge of pronouncing letters. Nowadays, we always combine that with learning about the Quran, and then you go to the mosque and you learn tajweed. But tajweed, it was actually introduced back in time when a lot of non-Arabic people converted to Islam. The tongue is changing because non-Arabic people, they speak in a different way. So they came up with this field of tajweed to come up with rules to make sure that even the non-Arabic people converting to Islam will be able to pronounce the letters in the correct way, to be able to recite and read the Quran in the correct way. So that's basically what you start with, tajweed. So I started with that also. Then I learned the Quran, alhamdulillah. That was during my studies also in Egypt. And it was at first only memorization. Then,
how old were you when you did that?
I think when I finished, I was 21 or, yeah. But that was memorization. Then I started to follow classes of tafsir, but it's for me hard to say because I followed different classes. Like I studied tafsir Ibn Kathir, Baghawi, Shanqiti, but like you don't have to go to all of these to understand what's in the Quran. But like I studied, I studied tafsir, and by the way. Tafsir is not one of the fields I was just talking about. Like it's part of another field, but I'm now telling the how I followed how I prioritized my studies. I did tafsir right after memorizing the Quran because I wasn't comfortable with memorizing the Quran without understanding deeply what I was reciting or what I was memorizing. And because I was living in Egypt at that time. And I'm not sure if someone here lived in Egypt for a long time, or in any Arabic country or any other Islamic country, but one of the reasons why I dived very deep into tafsir and also did different tafsir studies is that what I was learning, memorizing in the Quran, I didn't see it in practiced in society at all. So for me, it was like there was a paradox. Like I'm here in the country of knowledge with so much knowledge. Like Egypt, whenever I go to Egypt, like even if I go again in Ramadan, I will also study some stuff. But it's so rich when it comes to knowledge. And my teachers and the people I used to study with, alhamdulillah, they are great people. Like there are extremely good people. I'm not saying that everything is bad. There are extremely good people in Egypt, like role models and examples, and really practicing what they preach and what they learn and what they know. But in general, the society in general and the political situation, the economical situation, it's not in line at all with what I studied. So I started to have like these questions: how come that a country can claim it's an Islamic country, but then all your institutions are not in line with your teachings and so on. So I wanted to understand more about my religion. So it was a very personal search and question and drive.
Yeah. If you don't mind, Samira, because that was actually also one of the reasons that we started working very tightly knitted together.
Yeah.
Because the first time that we invited Samira was right after the 7th of October. We had
in Amsterdam.
We had in Amsterdam.
Yeah.
We had
an event.
We had an event in order to raise money for Gaza, and it was the first time we met each other. And I think it was exactly this point where, because now I think I can call you our house theologian, maybe, of the Creative Muslim Club. It was exactly this point where we felt that there is a lot to gain, also when it comes to creativity, right? Because at the end we're the Creative Muslim Club. And we're going to go deeper into the halaqah part in a minute.
Yeah, of course. I'm just looking at the time, and I also want to finish the question of Umayma.
But you got to 2, huh?
Yeah.
How many?
Yeah, no, I won't. That's why I said I won't mention. Then you go to hadith and fiqh. So I can give the books I studied and the teacher I studied, but maybe what I want to say, then you go to fiqh. I studied fiqh Shafi'i. That's mainly practiced in Egypt, and that's my specialization. Later, I studied fiqh Maliki as well. Now I'm studying fiqh Hanafi. So I did a lot of different things. I studied poetry. So poetry is one way in Arabic countries to get more in touch with the Arabic language. So I can give you an overview maybe after, so we can go to another question. But now I'm following another program, mainly in Canada and partly online. And maybe that's easier to talk about because I can just give you the program and you can see all the subjects online. So I won't have to mention it here. It's called Adil program, Advanced Diploma in Islamic Studies. And it's based mainly in Canada, but most of their stuff is hybrid or online. It's provided by the Center of Islamic Knowledge. And what I like about them, or why I joined them, is all their programs and their whole school is based on the thought of two very important scholars in our modern history. One of them is Abdel Fattah Abu Ghudda. He passed away in 1997. He was a very knowledgeable Syrian scholar, but he was also very involved in society. And that's where you see a gap nowadays, that you have a lot of people having a lot of knowledge, but they don't engage with society. He was extremely engaged with politics and society, and he left a lot behind him, organizations, books, and so on. The second one is Hassan al-Nadwi. And Hassan al-Nadwi was Indian. He also passed away in the 90s. And he was the same in India, like a scholar deeply rooted in knowledge, but also politically and socially active, and really trying to make an impact with his knowledge. And that's exactly why I joined that school and why I'm following that 4 years. It's a 4-year-long program. I'm following it because that's what I believe in, that you gain knowledge. Not to mention all the subjects you did, or to show the diplomas, or to be known as someone who has knowledge, but to actually make an impact on a social and political level, and really influence people, and try to make your life and the life of others better. So the program I just mentioned, you can just Google it and you will see all the subjects I follow. It's a 4-year program, and for the rest, maybe during the iftar or something we can mention it. Otherwise, I'm afraid we won't be able to go to the other questions. And I also want to go back to Rushan's point. So.
Yeah, I think it's. I think the point that you just made, right, about society. I think that brings us to to the point that we wanted to discuss as well. When we started the Creative Muslim Club, one of our aims, of course, is to rethink Muslim excellence. What does it mean to have Muslim art in the context where, most of us that are here at the moment, in the context where we grow up as third culture kids. I don't know if everybody's familiar with that term. Is there anyone who's not familiar with the term?
Yeah, I have to explain maybe.
Yeah. So a third culture kid is someone that is born or either raised in a culture that is different from that of his heritage or his or her parents, right? And so what happens is that this individual or individuals come up with hybrid forms of expression. And so what we are seeing at the moment, of course, is internationally looking, is that we have now the second generation, the third generation that is growing up. So we've got a lot of artists, a lot of poets, even politicians. In every sense of the word, we have individuals that represent both the heritage of their parents and the heritage of the country in which they grow up or are maybe even born in. And so it is our belief that this position that we hold is a very delicate but also a very important position, because within a generation or within 2 generations there is a possibility that, for example, the culture of the place where we reside will become more dominant. It will be more difficult for them to be connected to the heritages of our parents and our grandparents, right? So what we try to do is try to rethink how, in our case, Western culture is developed and how we can shape it. So it is a very proactive way of going about your duty as a Muslim. And I think that brings us to the question of Ummatics. For your information, Samira is someone that travels a lot. She travels all over the world for these classes, has a very international understanding also of Islam. And very recently, she traveled to Canada and to the north of the United States for, was it 2 weeks or a week of lessons?
3
weeks.
2.5.
2.5 weeks of training. And she came back with a concept that's called Ummatics, and I'm going to ask you to describe it to us, which to a very large extent shapes the way that we try to express ourselves at the Creative Muslim Club.
Yeah, so before we go to the second part, are there any questions or something someone wants to share? Because as I said, I like my classes to be interactive, so. Okay.
I actually do have one question.
Yeah, tell me, Umayma.
Because you said you try to gain knowledge, so
Yeah.
impact, right? Can you maybe, because I can also imagine that there are people who think, okay, I can have some knowledge, but why do I need to keep excelling in more knowledge, a specific field to be able to make impact? Like, is it even necessary?
So first of all, I don't gain knowledge to make an impact. Let me rephrase it. So I started to study because I had certain questions and stuff I didn't understand, and I wanted clarity for myself. That's number one. Then from an Islamic perspective, whenever you have knowledge, you can't keep it for yourself. That's a major sin. So I feel obliged to share it. And then the third point is that also from an Islamic perspective, and that's not something that's not like, I think in line with that, but it's not something I came up with. It's the model of our Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, that whenever you have knowledge, you don't only speak about it, you also practice it. And when you come to practicing, you talk about making impact and changing things. And I'm glad you asked this question, because this is a dimension of the history of our Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, which we don't pay attention to it actually, which is the social and political changes he made in order to establish his message, in order to come up with a just society, in order to come up with a society where people are free to do ibadah towards Allah and their God. And as I said, it's a dimension which is often neglected. In particular, that's my observation, in particular in countries like the Netherlands, because people get so obsessed with this is haram and this is halal and you should wear this and you shouldn't do that. And we say in Dutch, we make it plat. Like we take all the depth of the life of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and we just look over it and we stick to some, like, I don't want to say minor issues, but we stick to some issues without knowing the whole context. And then you forget about making impact. You forget about how important it is to create an ummah. You forget about how important it is, how important community building is. And you just focus on like random stuff, labeling it as halal and haram without even knowing why it is halal or haram. Like, because if you understand why it is halal or haram, you will understand that the impact of haram is related to something which can damage your society. Then you will understand, oh, that's why this is forbidden, because it breaks the structure of a healthy and just society. Or, oh, that is why this is halal, because it is part of working towards a healthy and strong and just society. So I'm not sure if this is an answer on your question. Okay. So we go back to the idea of Ummatics. So one of my teachers at the program I just mentioned, and you will find his name if you look him up, Umayma, or if you look the program up, is Uwaymir Anjum. Uwaymir Anjum is from Pakistani origin, but he lives now in the US for a very long time. And a few years ago, he came up with the concept Ummatics. Because in our time, I think everyone is familiar with politics, right? Politics. We have politics, we have mathematics, we have physics. Like we have all these different fields of knowledge where you have certain questions, you answer them, you write books, and then you have accumulative knowledge within a certain field. So, for example, politics is the field where we study everything related to political issues, where we ask questions related to politics and dive deep into them and do research and so on. Ummatics, and then a few years ago, he said, we talk so much about the Ummah, but we don't have any category or study dedicated to this kind of knowledge. So that's why he came up with the term Ummatics, like the same way we have politics, where we ask political questions and do political research. Here we have Ummatics, where we ask questions related to the Ummah, where we do research related to everything related to issues related to the Ummah, where we dive deeper into the Ummah. So, for example, if I ask now a random question, what does the Ummah mean? And what is an Ummah? And who is considered part of the Ummah?
Let's try.
Maybe different answers will come up. So if I ask, what is an Ummah?
A community?
Community, okay. Who is part of that community?
Anyone who does a shahada.
Okay.
I think the root is bond, which means bond.
Yeah, that's the linguistic aspect of it, yes.
It's like coming together.
Yeah.
People who share stuff, like they have a
Yeah.
shared common thing.
Yeah, and when we say Ummat Muhammad, what's that mean?
The community.
Yeah, which community?
People follow their religion.
Yeah, but are these only the people following the Prophet, or are these the people who live between the time of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ until the end of times? So you see, we only started to brainstorm now for 2 minutes, maybe even 1 minute, and we already have different questions. But the point is, and maybe in different group we have these questions, but you don't have one field or category of studies where you bring those questions together to really come to some deeper discussion, maybe come up with a definition or more than one definition to start working on them. Next to all I just mentioned, I'm also an environmental scientist, and I work now at a certain organization where we make future scenarios for the environment in the Netherlands, and we are working on scenarios until 2050, 2080, and so on, which is a very common practice also for companies, for any group of people with a shared idea who want to go further and who want to make something out of their ideas, who want to bring their values further and to make an impact with them. What they do, which is very understandable, they come up with a strategy, like a vision, a future vision or a future scenario, a strategy, and then you work towards it. We don't have that when we talk about our Ummah. So that's also part of Ummatics, that you bring people and scholars together and train students to become scholars, to think, what is the Ummah? Where is the Ummah? Who is the Ummah? What is the plan for the Ummah? What are the statistics? Like any company, when they want to do something, they say, well, we have 2 employees, I think we need 10 more and specialized in this and this and this to achieve what we want to achieve. We don't even know the statistics of our community. I think, doesn't anyone knows the statistics of the Muslims, for example, in The Hague, or in the Netherlands, or in Europe, or in the UK, or in the US, or worldwide? We don't know the statistics. We don't know how many of our people are located in which continents, what the strong talents are we don't have an image or anything about, like we have in the Netherlands, we have, for example, SCP, Sociaal Cultureel Planbureau. That's where they do the work. They do the statistics of everyone in the Netherlands, and we have so many teachers and so many people with this background and so on. This is also part of the work we want to do at Ummatics, to have the statistics, like what kind of people do we have worldwide in our community, in our Ummah? What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? Say, for example, we notice that only 2% of the millions of Muslims we have are doctors. Okay, maybe we should train more people in this field. How are you going to come up with a plan if you don't know the state of the Ummah? Umayma, you have another question.
Yeah, sorry.
This is becoming like a...
Very interested in me, but I almost cannot believe that this is not already happening. Like, I almost don't want to believe it when you say, no, there are no statistics, there are not already people who already came together since the Prophet ﷺ until now.
No, we don't say that. I don't say that. No, we don't say that. We don't say that this is the first time from the time of the Prophet that we come up with this field.
Okay.
But in other times, back in time, it was the situation was different. You had an ummah which was almost unified. I say almost because they were never fully, but almost unified. You had collective governance. You had collective institutions, Islamic institutions. Nowadays, you don't have that. And people now, they have some stuff like this for regions. Like some organizations started to do this for the US only. Some organizations started to do it for Malaysia. But in this field of studies, you combine everything together. The same way as when you study politics, maybe when you study politics, even in the Netherlands, in one country, you will have a different approach from university to university. I'm not saying that everyone, when it comes to Ummatics, should study the same way. I'm quite sure that when you start to make this subject bigger, you have people at certain universities in a certain country having a certain methodology. Some will approach it more from a quantitative perspective, other from a qualitative perspective. But what I'm trying to say is, at this moment, no, you don't have a certain subject where all these questions are centralized and studied in depth to come to a certain outcome.
Could we compare this to the WHO in that sense? And is the main, because I notice now, I think when you and I have the discussions, we go more into the qualitative stuff when it comes to Ummatics. I notice now that you put a higher emphasis on the statistics. Well, what can you tell us about the qualitative understanding when it comes to Ummatics?
No, I used to mention the statistics just as an example. But when it comes to Ummatics, at the end of the day, it is the idea that you start with the hadith where the Prophet Muhammad teaches us all Muslims are like one body. And if one is hurt, then everyone is hurt. The urgency of a subject like this is, for example, what's happening in Gaza. It's unbelievable with how many million Muslims do we have around the world. How many? And you still have to watch for 1 year your own brother and sister getting slaughtered online in a way which is unbelievable. So where is the Ummah in that case? So that, like, lately we have seen the urgency of why it is important to ask ourselves the question, where is the Ummah? And why is our situation like this? Also from a historical perspective, like what happened for the past 40, 50 years, maybe the past 100 years, that we arrived to this point. And what happens if we collect each other again and start strong institutions? Because I'm referring to Gaza, but to be very honest, if you only study history for like the last 80 years, it's unbelievable. Like, to be very honest, what's happening now in Gaza, 10 times of what's happening in Gaza happened in Algeria. But I think even some Algerian people I know in the Netherlands, they don't know about their own history. They don't know about it. They don't know about it. Like the nuclear bombs were dropped and tested by France in Algeria. I know Algerian people who don't know about this. Like, they are, from my generation, they studied in the Netherlands, they are like at universities, they're doctors, engineers, and so on. They don't know what happened in their own country. And this has been going, like the difference with Gaza is now it's live streamed. That's the only difference. But it happened in Afghanistan, it happened in Iraq, it happened in Algeria in the 60s. It happened in so many places, in Bosnia in the 90s. And either we don't know about it, or we just don't make the connection that these are also our people, or we don't go to the point that we ask ourselves, how come that year after year after year who are being slaughtered. It happened also in Indonesia, by the way. So, and not even asking these questions without reaching a solution is, from my perspective, problematic. Because then we didn't understand what the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ actually came to do. It's not only about, like, Islam isn't only an individual journey or an individual religion. It's both. It's individual and it is on a collective level. It's the individual and the community. Our ibadat are individual and communal. And as I said, I can understand that we are at a point that we don't know how to go further, that we don't know, what to do, where to start, what to change. But to not even ask yourselves certain questions when you read history or when you look at what's happening nowadays. I didn't even mention what's happening in Sudan or the Rohingyas. From my perspective, that's very problematic. And that's related to a mistaken understanding of what it means to be a Muslim.
But so I think that's clear, and I'm not sure, Samira. I think I would be positive or optimistic about it and say that most of the people that are, for example, in this room, feel this urge and do have the urgency to see change. But often, then what happens within the discussion that we point towards our leaders. But then what I would be curious about is what would be the practical side of Ummatics when it comes to this issue? Because I heard you say building institution, but what does that even mean?
Well, it's 2 points. First of all, you said, and I noticed that as well, that as there is a certain level of awareness, we really lack something as an ummah, otherwise this wouldn't happen to us. But then, yes, we start pointing with our leaders, that happens also. But we also start to point to ourselves in the community. So we focus much more on the differences.
You mean among ourselves or to ourselves?
No, among ourselves. So we focus much more on certain differences and we start to make big issues out of very minor issues. Like one example I always use when I talk about this stuff, because it really touched me when I read it maybe 10 or 15 years before. Is anyone familiar with Leopold Weiss? His name became Muhammad Asad later on. So Leopold Weiss, Muhammad Asad, he was born in 1900. And he was born as the son of a Rebbe, the grandson of a Rebbe, and his father was a Jewish journalist. He was born in Budapest, as far as I remember, and he lived also part of his life in Oostenrijk, Austria. And then at a young age, he started to travel in the Middle East, because at that time, Israel was not established yet. He was born in 1900. Israel was not established yet. But around 1928, 1930, the discussions to come up with a Zionist entity in Palestine started. And he used to travel as a Jewish, he was in his 20s back then, he used to travel as a Jewish journalist and a Zionist to the Islamic countries where conferences were held to gain audience and people for the idea of establishing a Zionist entity in Palestine. He was going there to support Zionism and to also speak and so on. So he started to travel a lot in the Middle East. At that time, it was very easy and common to travel from Libya to Syria by train, or from Egypt to Iraq by train, So mobility is also an issue, but we'll talk about that later. And he started to become more interesting in Islam and getting touched and so on. And his heart started to change, actually. He started to study Quran. And then he wasn't Muslim yet, but he went back to Austria and Germany, and he was traveling in the train, and he was looking around in the train, was all these people are so they don't smile at all, but they have it so good over here, and I don't understand why they're always so grumpy here in the West. And he was reflecting, whenever I'm in the Middle East, maybe they don't have all the money and stuff, but they're always happy, always warm. And then he went home in Germany, and he was still reading in the Quran at that time, and then he opened the Quran at the Surah Al-Hakum Al-Takathur, which actually says you are distracted by growth and getting more and more. Distracted from being grateful, distracted from seeing what you already have, and so on. And then that was the moment, he said, when he became Muslim. Like for him, it resonated so much with his training. That was the moment for him to become Muslim. Then he started to travel again in the Middle East, but this time to talk about why he became Muslim and to talk against Zionism. And he participated in writing the first Islamic grondwet. I'm fasting, my mind is a bit... Constitution of Pakistan also, by the way. And then he met a lot of interesting people during his lifetime, and he wrote an autobiography. It's called The Road to Mecca. And in that he says, he writes a sentence which I never forgot when I read it. He said, I used to travel in the Middle East, and in every Islamic and Arabic country, I used to hear the same adhan, and people pray 5 times a day to the same God, the same way. He said, these are for me the basic elements you need to have a unified community or ummah. And he said, in Europe, we all speak different languages. Like if you go to Germany, you maybe won't understand what they are saying. Then you go to Austria, you go to Italy. We all speak different language, but somehow we learned how to unite ourselves. And he was like, for him, it was like mind blowing. How come that when you have the basic elements to unify yourself, you are so not unified, and then you have Europe on the other hand, which doesn't have these very strong elements, but they know how to unify themselves. Why I'm referring to this point is, from my perspective, he touches upon something very fundamental. That at the end of the day, as a Muslim, you pray to the same God. You say the same shahada, you listen to the same adhan. How can you even think about making such big issues or problems between each other because we have cultural differences, or this one, don't know, they move their hand this way in prayer while the other doesn't, and then you label them with kufr and so on, and you come up with a very divided community. While in a sense you have the strongest element to get united, because that's where your question started actually, and you said, okay, how can we come up with practical stuff? Well, by studying this kind of stuff, by studying what is, by gaining awareness on and reflecting on this kind of stuff, and that is also something we do at Ummatics. To build a strong Muslim, an individual strong Muslim, but also to understand what unifies us, and then to grow, to overcome the need to always criticize each other and label each other, and I don't know, maybe some Muslims, they feel that they are a good Muslim when they criticize their own brother and sister. I'm not sure, but that's also part of Ummatics, to have some subjects dedicated to this kind of knowledge. Because when you say where you start, from my perspective, it's by gaining knowledge to understand the fundamental parts, and also to gain knowledge to understand the more important stuff. Like, I always give an example. If you are a doctor, for example, and or if you are a sick person and you are diagnosed by cancer, at that point, that's the first thing you will focus on. I don't think that a cancer patient who is very sick and really needs serious treatment will say, well, I have a scar here, I think I will still first do a beauty surgery or whatever to remove it, and then I will look at. When it comes to our health and some issues, we have the ability to make a difference between what's major and what's minor, or what comes first and what comes after. When it comes to our community, we often lack that, and that's a lack of knowledge and a lack of good understanding of that knowledge.
So, and if I play devil's advocate here...
No, we are in Ramadan, no devils. Yeah. Where did you come from?
So I think a counter argument often is that we are also obliged to counter or to keep or attain a certain kind of whatever it means purity within our religion. I think that's something that's often
very important.
given back. And so,
Yeah.
so is there any tension between what you're explaining at the moment and between this attainment of purity within the religion?
No, but maybe it's good to also go, because I had certain ayat which I want to discuss. Maybe it's good to go to the second one. So this is an ayah, and I just we just discussed it at the halaqah. كنتم خير أمة أخرجت للناس تأمرون بالمعروف وتنهون عن المنكر. So this is in Surah Al Imran, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, you are the best community singled out for people. In other way, you are the best of community. I don't like this translation, but you are the best of community out of people, because you enlighten the other people. And it's very interesting, because this is mentioned as a fact. It's a fact, but it comes with conditions, and then the conditions are mentioned afterwards. You order what's no. It's in the first ayah. So in the second one.
Which one?
Yeah, this one. You order what is right. This is one of the conditions to maintain your status as being of the best of people. You order what's right and you forbid what's wrong. And it's quite interesting, because now you will say, yeah, but that is the opposite of what you were saying. No, it's not the opposite at all. But what are you ordering for good and what are you forbidding as wrong? That's the question. Because order what is right is also about what are the priorities when it comes to what is right. And forbidding what's wrong it's also about what is exactly wrong, and what do we label as wrong because we don't know that it's actually not wrong, but maybe we were taught differently, or it is wrong in a certain culture but not in the other, or a certain madhab and not in the other. So it's actually, and that touched upon your point. So from my perspective, it's not, what I said is not against what Rushen was saying, but the question is, what is the good that we thrive towards too, and that we are obliged to order towards it, and what is the wrong that we talk about? And this needs knowledge to understand. And that's exactly why I started with the idea of gaining knowledge, because and then I think we come also to the point of Umayma. If you want to build an ummah, and if you want to grow, and if you want to do good, you need the knowledge to know how to move towards that vision and towards that path. And then you see also a very functional part of knowledge. And then it doesn't become a personal desire to make an impact with your knowledge, but it becomes part or a practical aspect of this ayah. How can you command good if you don't know what good is? And how can you forbid wrong if you don't know what wrong is?
And so I remember one time when we were having this conversation, you came up with the example of irrigation and water. Do you remember the example?
No.
You forgot?
Yeah.
Okay, so then I'll do it for her, right? No problem. So the example that Samira gave, although she forgot, is that when it comes to the responsibility of rulers, if we go back into the starting ages of our religion and of our ummah, if I may say so, is that one of the first things that they did is come up with a way to have clean water delivered to the people that need to pray. And so everything that's being done is being done. You remember now? You want to finish it or should I?
No, you can finish it, yeah.
I would offer you some water, but so one of the things that they did is make sure that there's clean water to do wudu, to wash yourself before you pray.
I will rephrase it, if it's possible.
Please, go ahead.
So I remember now what you are pointing to. So it's the idea that from an Islamic perspective, you have a holistic approach to life. You can't say, as Muslims, we pray and we don't do anything else. Because if you want your prayer to be accepted, you need wudu. If you want to make wudu, you need clean water. If you want clean water for your wudu, you need to have a system to provide the people with clean water. You see what I'm trying to say? And that's the example I remember now. For example, another example is astronomy. and the stars. Like one of the reasons why our Islamic like grandparents were so excelling in the science of astronomy is that at some point they used to move away from the Kaaba. They used to travel around the world. They didn't have iPhones and whatever to show them the Qibla, but at some point they wanted to pray, and it's night. Okay, how do I pray? Then you want to know how to get the direction to Mecca. How do you do that? Based on the stars. Then they used to study the stars. So behind a lot of excellence in our community, in history, and the way our grandparents and grandparents used to approach sciences was part of their ibadah for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you see how holistic everything was. And then nowadays people come and they say, no, it's not important as a Muslim to become a doctor or environmental engineer. Just focus on your Islamic studies. So what's Islamic and what's not? You know. So what we don't have that division from Islamic perspective that way. That medicine or worldly sciences are not Islamic studies. It's based on the intention you have when you approach them.
Again, something that comes up to mind, and I know we have only 50 minutes left, so I'm going to try to give as much space also to you guys. Sorry? Yeah, we're already all fully in the halakha, so that's fine. One of the things, and I remember, I think about 3 or 4 years ago, I was in the Ulu Mosque in Utrecht, the big one. And I remember the Imam, in an emotional manner, he gave us the following anecdote. He said, and he was speaking to the whole Friday congregation, he said, every time that you guys come with your children because you want me to teach them something, it's often the children that are least brightest. He said, how come that when you have an intelligent child, you ask him to go and become a lawyer, become a doctor, do something that's going to make money for the family? But how come that every time that you come to me, it is the child of which you yourself say, I don't know what to do with this one? He said, it is the expectation that we have of ourselves as an ummah is to give that which is the best of you, to give excellence in the way of your Lord, of Allah. And so I completely agree with you when it comes to excellence, and when it comes to ibadah not only being studying the Quran, but I have a feeling that I will not speak for the whole of the Muslim world, but for that part of the world which I know, which is the Western world, which is the US, UK, and Europe. I know that we have forgotten to strive for excellence, not for ourselves, but for Allah. And so something that I would be very curious about, and to pose some questions to you guys, is you've listened to the ideal of Ummatics, this whole idea of excellence. I don't know if there are any creatives in the room, I expect so. Are there any people that want to give something back, that have something to say about everything that we have just discussed? Yes.
And just make a quick comment. And you mentioned Al-Azhar, just a few steps away from Al-Azhar, there is the Islamic Museum of Islamic Art. And I was there in January. There is a magnificent exhibition that shows the contribution of Muslims from the old times, and how many Muslims have contributed to medicine, to physics, to astronomy, to any kind of disciplines. Until today, a lot of the substances that we use in the medicines were created and founded by Muslims. And it's true, I think we have lost a little bit of that tradition that we need to reconnect, and obviously it will come down to reconnecting with knowledge as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, and some people in the West are starting to acknowledge that. So I was talking yesterday to someone in the energy sector, and we were talking about the fact that, for example, at school you studied Copernicus in science and stuff, and how he discovered that the Earth was moving around the sun and not the other way around. But it was not Copernicus actually who did that. It was a Muslim scholar from Alexandria. And what Copernicus did is that he translated his stuff, but then everything was acknowledged to him. And we have lots of examples of that. And you study that when you study the history of science. Now, also in Western academia, they are becoming a bit more honest and also mentioning the contribution of Muslims in all these fields. It's a nice place to go.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Anyone else? At the back, yes.
Inspired by that earlier point, I heard that there was a Muslim physician, maybe it was Ibn Rushd or somebody else, but he would, when he had like a medical question that he wanted to discover the answer to, he would pray to Allah first for the answer, and then he was extremely excellent in his field. So this idea of ihsan and submitting to Allah, and remembering that there isn't a distinction between what we're aspiring to do in our worldly life and for Allah. Because, for example, Sulaiman and Dawood were kings in the world and they had dominion over the world, but it was always for Allah, and then Allah gave them such unmatchable excellence.
Yeah, and the same goes for Al-Bukhari. Al-Bukhari didn't write any hadith down in his book after making wudu and praying 2 rakat. Every hadith he wrote, he prayed 2 rakat before it. Even more, like nowadays, you have I think if all of you maybe have a mushaf, not in your phones, but the real mushaf, it's handwritten by someone called Taha Uthman. I met him in person a few months ago. He's 92 right now. Taha Uthman, he's the one who wrote the whole Quran in order of Saudi Arabia, and which is distributed all over the world. He didn't write any letter without making wudu. And then he mentioned when we were sitting with him that years ago, while he was working on a task and writing some ayat, he just couldn't write. He had like a mental block. His hand wasn't helping him. I was like, what's... And then he remembered that he didn't have wudu. So he went to make wudu, and so it's a practice which is actually still... it's a ritual still practiced by a lot of scholars nowadays. Alhamdulillah.
Beautiful.